Well, a recovery program at St. Matthew's Church of Christ in Monroe is making a difference. Jasmine Bingham spoke to officials about the impact of Celebrate Recovery.
I spoke to the pastor of St. Matthew's Church of Christ about how Celebrate Recovery is creating a safe environment for those recovering and how it's combating crime.
However, your pain, your grief can be a pathway to a greater healing and understanding through Celebrate Recovery.
Celebrate Recovery is a Christian-based recovery program that offers support to people facing addiction, trauma, and other life issues. People are able to share their experiences in small group meetings. The pastor tells me this is the first African-American recovery program in South Monroe.
South Monroe, where crime is heavily prevalent, whether it be domestic abuse, whether it be drug use and different things like that. What are you all doing to combat that?
And saying, hey, it's all right to suffer, but hey, you don't have to stay here. And they're sitting and they're planning with people from the community, hey, we need to get the word out about what's going on here.
The program is funded by a grant through the Southside Economic Development District.
Recent murders and happenings, drug busts on right in this block.
Matthews says they use a holistic approach and partner with the local counselor to offer attendees resources. He says they are now partnering with local churches in the community.
When you drive into the community, it's evidence that hurts, hang-ups, and habits are there. I'm able to be in a place that I never thought I would be.
Celebrate Recovery meets each Wednesday at 6:30 at St. Matthew's Church of Christ. Back to you.
Jasmine.